Now, some different areas have been, of executive function have been found to have some more difficulties, or individuals with autism have shown a tendency to have some difficulties in some areas of executive function. One of them is working memory. And working memory is really kind of this dynamic process of bringing something up into our brain and being able to take some other information and work on it and compare these things, use these things, and combine these things, and then bring them out into a response. One of the common ways that we test this is with number repetition. We do this with number repetition forward, but then we also have individuals do this backwards. So if they were to be asked to repeat the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 backwards, they would go 4, 3, 2, 1. Individuals with autism may show a tendency to have some difficulties with planning and organization. And planning and organization really require that we take a number of different things into account. So when we look about planning for completing an assignment, there may be a number of steps in completing an assignment. I may need to go to the library to get a book. Then I may need to read the book. Then I may need to answer certain questions on the assignment. Each of those three things may be done on different days. I need to be able to plan out the work that I'm going to be doing to be able to complete those three tasks, to be able to complete the whole assignment. And some individuals with autism show some tendency to have some difficulties with planning and organizational skills. Now, we had talked earlier about some individuals with autism having some difficulties kind of stopping themselves from doing things. And this really gets into this concept of inhibiting a prepotent response. And what a prepotent response is that's our automatic response to something. So if somebody says something to us, and probably the classic example for me is when somebody's driving, or when I'm driving down the road and somebody cuts me off, all of a sudden I will use certain language that I don't tend to use at other times. But because this has happened where someone's cut me off, out comes this prepotent response. Now, I need to inhibit that in schools. So if somebody runs into me in the school, I need to be able to stop myself and look around and say, oh, you know what? It's a busy hall. They didn't mean to do it. Some individuals with autism have struggles with this, and in fact, if someone runs into them in the hall, they may actually push the person back as a way of showing the person that they can't be pushed, or as a defensive response to the sensory aspect of being pushed. And there are others. I mean, there are a number of different reasons why an individual may do this, but again, the ability to inhibit a prepotent response is a very important one for sitting in your seat and being able to complete work in a classroom. The concept of shifting sets is really the concept of shifting from one way I'm thinking to shifting another way. And this happens frequently in classes. I may do a task for a period of time one way, and then I may need to stop that task and begin doing another task. And this can be as simple as when I come into class, let's take a reading class. I come in and I'm supposed to do 5 minutes of silent reading at the start. Well, I do my 5 minutes of silent reading, and then I'm supposed to stop the silent reading, put away the book, and begin to engage in a more group reading task. This can be hard because in doing the silent reading, I may get my brain kind of focused on one thing, and then to stop that and move to the new task may be difficult for some individuals with autism. Now, we had already talked about some things around monitoring actions, and the concept of metacognition is the concept of thinking about my own thinking. Now, these have some real-world applications into what we see every day. They may have, individuals with autism may have difficulty organizing themselves. They may have papers all over the place. I've seen individuals with autism who are carrying their computer bag on one arm, and they're holding their computer in the other arm, and they're trying to carry something else in their arm, and they're really having a difficult time walking down the hall, where just putting the computer into the computer bag might help them out. Some individuals also have difficulty with narratives, and the narratives really require that we not only know the facts, but we also get a number of different other things from this, like the emotion of the people involved. Be able to figure out the intentions of what people are doing in the narrative and what they're meaning. This can be difficult for some individuals. They may be prone to tangential and off-topic discussions, or they may be prone, on the opposite, to perseverating. And some individuals will look at the tangential or off-topic discussions as being kind of an associational thinking. They hear something and they really go off on this tangent, talking about it. And they tend to bring that tangent back to an area of intense interest. Now, some individuals may have more difficulty with perseveration. So they may have difficulty stopping themselves from talking about something that they've talked about before, or a subject that they're very interested in, and that may continue on and on and on. It is probably one of the more classic things that I think of when I think of somebody with autism, when I think of this next one, which is being rigid and inflexible. And this is where, if I do a routine, if I have a certain way of driving to school, if I drive a different way, that may cause me, if I'm an individual with autism, that may cause me some distress because I have a routine and that routine is being violated. And classrooms are all about routines. We have certain ways that we expect to come into the class, get prepared for things, and to really how we participate in this class. Some classes require you to raise your hand. Other classes you can just blurt out. Some individuals with autism may struggle with this because in their more rigid and inflexible way of thinking, this may not make sense because they may have, see rule violations all the time. And one term I've heard used for this is they may become the little cop, the individual who tells everyone else when they're violating the rules. Now, there may also be a slow reaction time, and that slow reaction time can frequently be seen for some individuals in their responses to directions to stop behavior. They may not be processing as quickly the direction to stop something, and sometimes it may take greater than 45 seconds to even a minute for individuals to process that they've been given a direction. And 45 seconds to a minute is a long time for an individual or for a teacher to be waiting for a student to stop something that they're doing. Now, this is some other different ways that we can also look at some of the broad cognitive patterns and some of the broad executive function types of patterns that we see with autism. I'm just going to highlight a couple here. And the first one that I'm really going to highlight is this difficulty with time concepts. And what we'll see with some individuals is that they may move too quickly or too slowly with their environment. They may move out of sync with their environment. In fact, they may be ready for something at a time that's different than everybody else. So the class may be getting out materials, and some individuals with autism may still be kind of thinking about the whole walk down the hall, and then a minute to 2 minutes after everyone else has gotten out of their materials, they may be just getting ready to start to get out their materials. So they may be moving too slowly for the environment around them. They may also have difficulty recognizing how things begin and what should be in the middle and what should be at the end of an activity. They may have difficulty in sequencing those types of things. Now another one, and this will again come up for some individuals, is really very strong interests. These particular areas of fascination that some individuals with autism have. I worked with an individual years ago who was into fans and household appliances. And he was fascinated that I had a 1940 Philco refrigerator, and he would refer to that every time that I saw him. In fact, I saw him years later when he was working out in a grocery store, and he referenced the refrigerator that I had in our interaction. Now we're going to talk about some of the more specific cognitive patterns that we may see in certain areas of cognition for individuals with autism. And we're first going to start out with some intellectual testing. And intellectual testing, there are some discussions that many intellectual tests probably underrepresent the actual intellectual functioning of some individuals with autism. And the reason for that really gets around the nature of testing. Testing can be a very anxiety-producing type of situation. It also requires that I give specific responses, and many times at specific times. And having a longer wait time can certainly affect aspects of testing. But there are some broad patterns that do tend to come up for some individuals with autism. They tend to do better on visuospatial reasoning and attention to detail and really rote memory, or those things that require us to just remember it exactly as it's said. And this has some real-world implications. Sometimes individuals will repeat back exactly what you say, so you'll tell them you'll give them a direction, like get out your book. And the student doesn't get out their book, and you say, what did I ask you to do? And they'll say, get out your book. And you as the teacher will become frustrated because they're not immediately getting out their book. And the reality is they haven't integrated that information. So they're still just repeating back what they've heard, not giving you actual responses to what the actual direction was. The areas that they tend to have more difficulty with are those integrative areas. So using language very flexibly, abstract reasoning, and then integration. Excuse me. They tend to have a better performance IQ than they have a verbal IQ, and that just means they tend to do better on those visual spatial tasks than they do on the verbal tasks. Now, it's of interest to me that one of the areas that they struggle the most in with verbal comprehension is really or verbal skills is this comprehension subtest. Because comprehension requires that I take a whole bunch of information in mind, and I generally will bring in some general knowledge to be able to make judgments about that information. And this is a subtest that some individuals with autism tend to have more difficulty with.